have Commissioner Galuli here from the Boston Transportation Department. So in lieu of my normal announcements, Commissioner Galuli.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I've been here a number of times in the past, and typically it was about the Central Artery project, so it's refreshing to have that way in the rearview mirror and be talking about more routine issues of traffic and parking. However, the parking issues are big across the city. I was given some questions to come and address. The first one was to talk about the parking situation in the North End relative to other Boston neighborhoods. And so I guess just as a category, if you think of Beacon Hill, South Boston, the South End, back there, there's a lot of similarities from here to there. There's a lot of businesses, their interests are competing with residential interests, and there's a lot of people visiting those sections of the city on a regular basis, and we just simply don't have enough parking. The loading zones and valet zones and metered parking are things that would distinguish what you have here, especially valet zones and metered parking would distinguish you from where I live, Hyde Park. You might have some commercial loading zones, but in general, you've got a much more intense competition for the curb. I'm reminded as I walked over here tonight of something in the tune of 15 years ago. We looked at ways to try to make the signage on Hanover Street a little bit easier to follow, but it's still challenging because sometimes in the same section of the street you've got 3 different regulations depending on what time of day. So you're really in an environment compared to other neighborhoods where they don't have to put up signs because it's especially away from the business districts. The business district is very intermeshed with residential, so it makes it really challenging. Another question I was asked to address was how many parking tickets are given monthly to non-residents who park in resident spots. These answers are based on the whole city. They're not just your neighborhood. So bear that in mind, and later I could try to get it broken out just for the North. But 2 years ago, fiscal year 13, 180,000 resident parking tickets were issued, or about 15,000 per month across the city. The subsequent year, a little less than that, but pretty close, 175,000 resident tickets were issued, about 14,600 monthly. Again, I could look into getting a separate report that gives you an idea here. Is there any effort by the city to enforce citations of non-residents who park in resident spots during garden events? And yes, absolutely. We track those events. We have a presence in the North End, excuse me, that's Monday through Saturday from 7:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. And we're also here for overnight on street cleaning violations. And there are other tickets that do get written by the teams that come through for that, but usually by that time, by 11 o'clock, when the regular shifts are over, that's probably taking care of anybody coming in for an event at the garden. Another question I was asked to address was how many North End resident parking stickers exist currently, and that number is 3,406. A subsequent question is we're looking real hard at how to use technology to try to manage this limited resource. You know, we use the signs, we try to do resident parking to protect the resident parking, but we're also going to be promoting a lot of alternative types of transportation. For instance, we met today with Zipcar. We've been having conversations with them and other providers of that kind of service, and there's some promising statistics that if people start using Zipcar, you can eliminate 13 vehicles from people decide they don't have to own a car after a while. It doesn't happen instantly. Somebody might wait till next year and say, hey, instead of the family owning 2 cars, we can get by with 1. And the documentation that they have is that it's pretty powerful stuff. And we want to get more and more into that. We've introduced a couple of new apps. Well, one that's been introduced and one that'll soon be introduced. Some of it will beat us by just a few days. on that app that you might have read about in the newspaper. But the app that's already out there is, if you're unfortunate and you actually get a parking ticket, we have an app which allows you to pay for that parking ticket through your cell phone. I think more exciting is the app that we're about to enter a partnership, and we just signed off on the best proposal today. It's going to allow you to pay for parking meters using your cell phone. This is part of our look towards the technology of managing parking. I'll give you a couple of other things we've been doing. Over in South Boston on the waterfront, we've experimented with a couple of hundred parking meters, parking sensors that are in the pavement, and they record back electronically and they let us know the occupancy of that space. Our meters aren't smart enough to tell us that, and maybe the next generation of meters will, but for the time being we did an experiment. And we started looking at the number of hours that were allowed to park in the different sections and whether it had any relationship to the percentage of occupancy at those meters. The idea being, if you have a lot of vacancy at meters, maybe you're doing something wrong with the structure of how many hours you're allowing. And sure enough, we found that there were 4-hour blocks of space that were fully occupied, and it wasn't good for the turnover in the neighborhood. And yet there were 2-hour spaces that weren't very occupied. And so what we're doing is we're actually switching that, because the 4-hour spaces are near the business, closest to the businesses. We want the quick turnover. We don't want people parking all day at those meters so that somebody else is trying to cheat and park incorrectly. So we're going to do an experiment and use the data from this experiment to see if by switching the number of hours where there was under demand to a longer number of hours, we might draw more of the long-term parkers away from where the action is, and where the action is, produce more turnover by reducing, which ironically was 4 hours, near the businesses with a lot of activity. So we're going to use that kind of data as we go forward and really crunch the data and try to find better solutions to how we manage parking. With that, I'll take a breath, and if anybody has any questions about it. Sure.
Just about the renewal of resident parking. Has there been an indication that there's been a significant increase? You just mentioned about, cutting down to 1 car.
Right. Well,
is there a way to track this over the years? To
we can. Let me try to get some numbers back through Ryan. I'll send it to Ryan or Philip, and try to get you some numbers. But it has been going up across the city. I don't have any particular numbers here. I just know that the trend has certainly gone up.
Are you doing this? You're bringing a truck into the city on one street on certain days so people can go to the truck and everybody can do their relative pickup?
Yes, yeah. The mayor has a truck that goes to different neighborhoods, and when we do renewals, that's one of the most popular items on our truck. It's a traveling city hall as such. Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. Yes,
it's in the paper this week.
The commercial, is that, why isn't that highly restricted between 8 and 12 o'clock? I see big trucks and delivery trucks, 1 and 2 in the afternoon on Hanover Street.
So they're not taking advantage of the time that we've told them they should be here?
They should be out by 12 o'clock, is that my understanding?
I know that there's a combination of regulations out there, and I wouldn't be able to tell you as I stand here whether there is no commercial loading after that. I think there might be some. It's been a while since I looked at the details of that. But let me talk to enforcement and make sure that they're coming through here on the afternoons and making sure that commercial parking is being enforced.
Thank you.
I have one questions. You mentioned the number of stickers that are issued. You probably don't know the answer, but how many legal parking spaces are there within our town? Approximately.
Yeah, and let me answer you very sincerely. I wish I could answer that, but on top of that, let me give you some promise, right? One of the highest priorities of the department is to actually go into the I'm going to say 20th century. We're now in the 21st century, right? But I want to get 20th century mapping. We've lacked that. And so we're going to push hard, and we're going to succeed in getting mapping of all of our parking regulations citywide. That's one of the other things that the mayor has a group called the Urban Mechanics, and we're working with them on a number of initiatives, and one of the most glaring deficiencies we have as a department is not being able to answer that question. For instance, I was over at South Boston talking to them about a change in their resident parking program. The first thing I would like to do when I have a conversation like that is to define what's there today before we talk about changing it. And we're not able to without sending somebody around and estimating what's on each street to tell that, but we want to get into the modern age on that, and that's one of our big objectives for this year.
Well, that question is old as dirt. So, no
Right.
one's been able to give us an answer.
Right, right. And the idea is when we get this mapping thing solved, we'd put it on time and people would be able to see and do your own analysis of what's happening in your neighborhood.
Any other questions from the council? No. Any from the audience? Daniel?
Dan Toscano, 78 Bridge Street. Is there a review of handicap parking? When someone gets a handicap spot and, God forbid, something happens in the future, or in the past, is there a review on where the spots are and what happens?
Yeah, so there's two kinds of handicap parking spaces. For instance, if you went downtown, say Union Street, there's a number of handicap spaces there that are not intended, not there because one particular person requested them. They're for people coming to do business at City Hall or going to a restaurant nearby. There's other spaces that are put there specifically upon the request of a resident. So when that happens, it's not specifically for that party, but most often that's the way it works out. It's not reserved, for instance, for that particular car. When those folks, I think it's annually, it might be semi-annually, they have to fill out reports. And I'll give credit when credit's due. Commissioner McCosh has reviewed that whole process, and she's in charge of the office that actually reviews these applications. And she's being very thorough in terms of making sure that people truly need one. You know, and so it doesn't go on ad infinitum without review. However, if you ever see anything, I'm sure she'd welcome an email. If you say, I don't think that's being used, or I think it's for whatever reason not appropriately being used, she'd appreciate hearing from you as well on that, and she could do an investigation.
The things they put on their window, it tells them the expiration date.
The placards.
On the placard.
Yeah.
So it says when that.
Well, see, there's a placard.
Not the plate.
No, I know. There's a placard, and then there's the space. And then the space is a process by which there's a review of a very substantial application, which has gotten more substantial just in the last year.
Well, if you have a team, send them around, because I walked on 4 streets and found 11 that run the registrations over there.
Okay, so that, you know, if you chose to, you could contact
Well, I
Commissioner
checked their
McCosh.
license plates and I know all the families, so I didn't write the story.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.